Ellen, pull yourself together already. It's time to feast. Sit down at the table with Andrew Ryan and Ellen Chu on Feast Meets West.
欢迎光临，
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 先生，请问你们几位
2位。
Hello, welcome to the feast, and this is Ellen Chu.
And this is Andrew Ryan. How you doing today, Ellen Chu?
I'm doing good.
Excellent,
Yes.
excellent.
Today I think we're doing something cultural.
Yes, we are. We do something cultural every week, Ellen Chu.
But this cultural is like, a foreign culture, right?
Yes. This coming Thursday, June 28th, is Vietnamese Family Day.
Wow.
And so that got us thinking about how there are so many new families with connections to Vietnam here in Taiwan.
Are there a big population of Vietnamese in Taiwan?
Huge population.
Wow.
Actually, they make up the third largest group of people who were born overseas. The first largest was China, then Indonesia. And the Vietnamese come in third with 200,000 people.
Wow, that is a lot of people.
So I got looking into the overseas Vietnamese population to see where they live around the world, and I found some very interesting things out.
Okay.
There are about 4 million overseas Vietnamese living in countries around the world.
Like?
Well, the top country is the United States with more than 2 million people.
That's a lot.
That is a lot of people. And then
Okay.
the neighboring country of Cambodia has 600,000, about 350,000 in France, which of
Wow.
course France and Vietnam have connections.
Right. Australia?
Japan, Canada, and then Taiwan.
Wow. 200,000 in Taiwan.
Yeah. So
Okay.
overseas Vietnamese workers send back $2 billion per year to Vietnam, and actually women make up 2/3 of all of the workers who leave Vietnam. So most of the Vietnamese in Taiwan are in this category. They're either
Okay.
economic migrants, they're either workers or their
But
spouses.
numbers are growing. We have international students, okay? There are a lot of international students applying to schools going all around the world.
So today
Yes.
we're going to be doing a little bit of a focus on Vietnamese populations overseas. And actually, this inspired me to reconnect with a Vietnamese-American classmate from university.
Okay.
And she agreed to introduce me to her mother's favorite recipe. So today in our show, a big challenge, Ellen Chu. I have never made egg rolls before.
Really? Not even local Taiwanese egg rolls?
Well, I've made the fresh variety.
Okay.
We call it rim bing, right?
Right.
But the actual deep fried version with Vietnamese ingredients on the inside, this is a first for me. And I ran into a huge roadblock. The recipe calls for square egg roll wrappers.
Oh.
And we don't have any square egg roll wrappers in Taiwan.
But you can make the round one square.
I know, if you cut it off the edges.
Yes.
But I actually didn't end up cutting off the edges.
You can just fold it.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not?
But they're different consistency, too.
Improvise. Exactly. Because, I had a nanny who was Vietnamese that worked in my house, taking care of my kids.
You make it sound so easy, Ellen Chu. I'm not just some
And
amazing cook.
she makes these spring rolls, just daily meal.
Oh, so you've had these before?
Yeah.
What if mine don't stack up, Ellen Chu? She's looking at me like...
With an experienced spring roll, eater, you better stack it up, okay?
Oh my goodness, and your kids are here today too.
Right.
You guys are all going to turn your noses up at it. I'm not going to do
Exactly.
Mama Nguyen proud.
Okay.
She's going to be shaking her head.
Well, let's check our menu first.
All right, let's do that. Let's get in on that before we
Okay.
sample the goods.
In our first course, Andrew reconnects with a Vietnamese-American college friend to learn about her mother's famous egg roll recipe.
That's right. In our second course, I'm going to attempt to reconstruct that dish in the Feast Meets West test kitchen.
And in the third and final course, we will sample his handiwork right here in the studio.
Oh my goodness. I'm nervous already, Ellen Chu.
This is a test.
A test. What a
Okay.
test. All right. This is the first song. It's called 我从越南来.
I'm from Vietnam, and this is by Chen Qiu Liu.
Okay, and this is
Okay.
by the Black Hand Nakashi Workers Band. You can hear that she sings it in both Chinese and Vietnamese. Great way to start our show. All right, back in a moment when the feast continues.
我从越南来，过山过海到台湾来。
first course.
We're back now on today's Feast Meets West, and in our first course today, one of my best friends from college is a woman named Ngan. Fast forward about 20 years since I last saw her, and she's married with 3 kids and is now Ngan MacDonald. I recently caught up with my old friend via phone call to Chicago to hear about her immigrant story, the story that brought her from Saigon in Vietnam to the United States. To begin the story, we need to rewind to 1980, about 5 years after the fall of Saigon, which is now known as Ho Chi Minh City. Her family, her parents and 2 brothers, had made multiple unsuccessful attempts to leave the country, and each attempt started with an excursion to see family in the Mekong Delta.
My mom kept saying, "Oh, we're going to go on a trip to visit them." You know, every time she would say this, we would pack up what I thought was a really small bag for going to visit my relatives, because normally when we went to visit my relatives, we packed a much bigger bag, but obviously if you're refugees and you're planning to get on a boat and cross the ocean, you're not going to carry much.
Right.
So I remember the first 2 times I thought it was odd, because we went and we would go in the middle of the night, which was also different. We, normally went during the day, and we normally went on the bus. And, in this case, there was like some arrangement where somebody came and picked us up. The first 2 times that it was unsuccessful, sort of nothing happened in my kids' view, right? In retrospect, now that I know what happened, it makes sense, but as a kid, I was really confused. I didn't know this, but we had, that was all the money we had. We didn't have, every time you try this, you give money to these folks who are operating, the boat. And the first time, there was no boat. The second time, we apparently missed the boat. And then the third time was the charm. And we were able to rendezvous with the larger boat.
Wow. And was your whole family there when you left?
Yeah. My mom basically said that it was all of us or none of us. There are a lot of families where they sent the dad and male child first to America to try to be an anchor. And my mom didn't want to do that because she wasn't sure what would happen if we were separated.
Yeah, I'm sure. That must have been very traumatic for the families that were separated. That's great that you were able to all leave together. How old were you when you left?
I was 7.
Okay, so you remember pretty much everything then.
Yeah, I remember most of that journey. And so we were on the open seas for, I think it was 13 days and 12 nights.
Wow.
I don't know how much you know about the boat people, but the vast majority of these, boats that were operated were not operated by people who knew anything about sea travel.
Wow.
They generally were fishermen who had a boat in the Mekong Delta, and they would decide to leave, and they would kind of quietly gather friends and family, and, you'd pay a certain amount to outfit the boat. And so our boat was outfitted with salted fish, rice, and barrels of water that were lashed to the side of a fishing boat that was intended to fish on the Mekong Delta.
Wow. So not out in the open seas.
Yeah. And it's not like they had any prior experience. So, they told us, it's going to take us about 3 days to kind of edge along the seas to get to Malaysia. And
so
that was the closest.
You were headed to Malaysia then?
That's where we were aiming. We ended up landing in the Philippines 13 days later.
Wow. Took a wrong turn, I guess.
Yeah, right. Wrong direction along the South China Sea.
Wow. Do you remember it being really choppy, the waves and or being afraid? I just can't even imagine what that would have been like.
Everything was good for the first 3 days. And then on day 3, we hit a storm. And when we hit the storm, all these barrels of water that were lashed to the side of our boat kind of fell off. And we were left with no water. And our food all requires that rice needs water to cook, and dried fish is not something you're going to eat if you don't have water. So they boiled ocean water and managed to get about 2 tablespoons per person out of like that process. And my mom had this little thermos, and she would take all of our water rations and she would pour it in. And then I remember she also had a bag of sugar. I think she got the sugar from like the boat people who operated the boat. But I remember her giving me and my brothers like a spoonful of sugar and a little tiny sip from this thermos. And I don't know if they actually drank any. I don't know if they saved it all for us, or they probably did drink some. But I just remember, that's really all we had was some sugar and some water, little sips of it.
Wow.
You asked me earlier about whether or not I was afraid. Well, these waves that, after the storm calmed, we were actually under in the hall, and after the storm passed a little bit, so, they kind of let some of the kids up, in turns. And when I came up, the waves after the calm of the storm were bigger than my house.
Oh, my goodness.
And then after the storm, everything calmed down, and we were in what's called a dead sea. So there was no waves, there was no wind, and we had also managed to somehow get into like an area of the South China Sea where there was absolutely no boat traffic. And during the storm, we lost our engine and didn't really know how to navigate very well. So I don't think they really knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
So we kind of floated around for a while. And finally, we got into a shipping lane, and we started to see all these boats. And by this time, like my brother, who's a year older than me, he was down to bare bones. And, these big ships would just pass us in the distance, and they wouldn't stop. And so they would hold up my brother, who, as like an example of, hey, we need help.
Wow.
But by that time, we had restored power to the engines. And I guess for whatever reason, they couldn't pick us up because we still had our own power.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So finally, we ran into a Filipino ship that was carrying students who were surveying the ocean bottom. And they gave us food, and they gave us water, and sent a tugboat to lead us into the island of Palawan. And so I remember, getting off of the boat, and I just remember, I just remember that when we were out in the ocean, the sea was this very ominous type of entity. And then I remember when we were walking onto the land, and like the beach, and just kind of like it was like I remember looking down, and it was about knee high, and thinking it was the most beautiful water I'd ever seen.
Wow.
I'm not very fond of the ocean.
I can imagine. Nice to look at from a distance.
Yeah, exactly. I don't like to be in water, to this day.
So from the Philippines, then your family ended up in America relatively soon after that?
No, it took about 9 months for us to get processed, because my middle brother has cerebral palsy. And so we had to kind of go through this process of, getting documentation from the folks that were sponsoring us over, and my aunt, who was in the U.S. at the time, to basically sign an affidavit that said that they were willing to take care of us, that, we wouldn't be a burden on society.
So that was back in the early 80s that happened. Obviously, it's a very different time for immigrants in America these days.
Yeah, I think so. And it was, even then, it was a pretty rigorous process, but it seemed like people understood that we were from a war-torn country, and that we, the government was hostile towards us. And so it wasn't really a question of whether or not we would be able to get in. I mean, very few people, I think, were sent back. It was just a matter of time. I think it's very different now.
One of the things that Ngan's mother would have brought with her to America was the knowledge of how to cook Vietnamese food. Now, I remember once eating egg rolls at their house in Chicago when I was a senior in college. These egg rolls, which would become known as Mama Nguyen's famous egg rolls, In my phone call to Ngan, I asked her to tell me about him.
So my mom has been making these egg rolls from as long as I can remember. And we've always said they were the best egg rolls on the face of the earth. And over time, we have shared them with lots of friends and families. And we have friends that actually go out of their way to try egg rolls in various Vietnamese restaurants. And they always come back and say, yes, your mom's egg rolls are the best.
I mean, this isn't your garden variety egg roll. It's much more complicated than I think the average restaurant does.
Yeah, there's a lot of chopping, and if you make it under my mom's supervision, she's very precise about the size and shape of everything that goes into it. So if you're going to shred the carrots, if you push too hard and shred it too big, she yells at you. So that's why for a long time I wasn't allowed to do anything other than to peel and separate the wrappers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you remember when you finally graduated to being able to chop alongside your mom?
Oh, actually, I wasn't allowed to chop until I was an adult.
Did you have to pass a knife skills test? I'm picturing like some kind of TV cooking show where she sends you jumping through hoops.
She would, occasionally give me the knife and say, do it this way. And then she would watch me do a couple, and then she would take it back. Like, you're not ready.
Yeah. I'm glad I was doing it by myself in the kitchen. So now, did your mom learn from her family?
She never really talked about it, but I think, yes, because my aunt cooks a similar thing, but I think she's evolved the recipe, because I know we've been with my aunt who lives in Canada and, made egg rolls with her, and she has a slightly different variation. And my mom over the years has varied her egg rolls, and, hers are very specific.
Does your mom follow a recipe, or does she do it by memory?
She does it entirely by memory.
Wow.
Yeah, and sort of like feel, and, she doesn't taste it anymore. Like, since it took me about 20 years from when she allowed me to actually make the egg rolls with her to get her to stop just before she would put the salt in. I would be like, whoa, stop. Let me measure how much is in that little handful that you just did. So, yeah, it was finally when I had kids, and my oldest son wanted to make the egg rolls, that my mom was like, oh, okay, I guess it's time for us to actually, write down what it is that goes into them.
Wow. So it was actually the process of passing the tradition on that made you want to get it down on paper.
Yeah, because my oldest son is now soon to be 14, but I think it was maybe 3 or 4 years ago when when my mom asked him, what do you want for your birthday? And he said, I want egg rolls. Can you make me egg rolls for my birthday?
How did she respond? Was she surprised?
I think she was happy and flattered and, surprised. I mean, he didn't just want egg rolls. He wanted to make them with her, and that was what he wanted for his present.
Wow, that's really special, actually. Yeah. Ooh, I've got goosebumps.
He's a sweet kid.
Did you watch that whole process of your mom making them with your son? Yeah.
First, she made them with him, and I stopped her along the way to measure everything and figure out, like, how much meat went in and how much, mushrooms went in. And then we had a big party with some friends of mine. And it was actually the second reason why she wanted to write it down, because everybody had been pressuring me to, hey, can your mom show us how to make her amazing egg rolls? And we all made them together. And it's so funny because my mom, who, when I was growing up, was really particular about her egg rolls, and, I couldn't even chop with them, would watch my son make these, and he has terrible knife skills. But, as a grandchild, and a grandparent relationship, it's apparently completely okay for him to have terrible knife skills and still be allowed to chop. It was really great. She just loved sharing with him. What she does is she makes egg rolls out of a labor of love, right? You know, she's in her late 70s. It takes a lot out of her now to make, you know, to do anything. And so when she occasionally makes it, it's kind of like she has to save aside the whole week, you know, because she chops different pieces of it and she sort of like spans it out over time. Whereas when we were younger, she used to just do it all in one day, and she can't really do that now.
Wow.
And yeah.
I mean, it's a huge process. We have to be honest about this.
Yes.
It took me forever. So how did I fare in the Feast Meets West test kitchen, you're wondering? Will the strange round Taiwanese egg wrappers work? That's up ahead in our second course.
This is Radio Taiwan International. Second course.
We are back now on Feast Meets West in our second course today, and I'm going to guide you through Mama Nguyen's famous egg rolls. And I'm not going to give you the specific amounts. If you'd like them, you can send me an email at androo@rti.org.tw. My friend Nan says it's okay to share the recipe. So basically what I've already marinated the ground pork with some salt, garlic, and some black pepper for several hours. Right now I'm just finishing up my chopping. I've already got the jicama and the dried wood ear black mushrooms, which I've soaked for 2-3 hours in water. I've also got some bean thread, also known as vermicelli, or sometimes we call them cellophane noodles. You want the kind made from mung beans. Also some white onion, cabbage, and we're going to mix that together with salt and black pepper and some egg and some garlic. And now that we've finished all the chopping of all of our veggies, the prep work is really what takes the most of the time. We just make sure that our meat to veggie ratio is about 2.5 pounds of meat to 4 pounds of veggies. And so now I'm just mixing all of the vegetables, the salt and the pepper, and the eggs, and we're adding the meat to it. And I'm just using my hands to mix through all of these different ingredients. The next step is to just separate the egg roll wrapper sheets, and I'm just rolling each one up with a small amount of filling, not too much. You don't want to overdo it because you don't want them to fall apart when you deep fry them. And now we're ready to deep fry one in the oil, and I'm just using canola oil to do the frying for this one. And so in they go into the deep fryer at 375 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm going to do about 4 or 5 minutes, at least until they're golden brown, until they're a little bit swollen looking. And then before I go into meet up with Ellen, I'm going to put them in the oven, reheat them at 425 degrees Fahrenheit for about 7 to 8 minutes, flipping them over midway. So they look amazing, I have to say that. You're going to have to join us now, straight away, for our third course back with Ellen Chu.
Third course.
Okay, the moment of truth, Ellen Chu.
Okay, let's have Mama Andrews. Okay. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
Careful, it's hot on the outside.
Okay.
Might not be hot on the inside.
Fine. Once we dip in the soy sauce, we can't tell, okay? Okay. I think it's good.
It's good. That little waver in your voice made it sound like...
No, I like it.
I'm happy.
You're too harsh on yourself. Mama Nguyen will be very proud, okay? Wow. I have to say, if I ordered it in a restaurant, I would come back for it.
Would you?
Uh-huh.
Oh, good. Thanks, Ellen Chu. It's definitely crispy on the outside. When it first came out of the boiler, like at 3 o'clock in the morning, this morning,
Okay.
they were very, very good.
Okay.
But then to bring them in, I had to freeze them and then reheat them in the oven.
That's fine.
I think they're not bad the second time, but the first time, fresh out of the deep fryer, holy cow. There's so many things in there. Do you know all the things that are in there? We have pork, jicama, salt, pepper, garlic, carrots, cabbage, black ear fungus, tree fungus. Oh, no, and also cellophane noodles.
Oh,
Dongfen.
yeah.
Yeah.
They have it in all of their, spring rolls, fried or non-fried.
So that is my virgin spring roll experience, Alan Chu, just for you.
Oh, this is amazing. I'll remember for life, okay?
And it's the
That his
Taiwanese,
version spring roll was given to me.
American, Vietnamese, Chinese spring rolls.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's meaningful.
A lot going on in there, Alan Chu.
Right.
Passed down from country to country.
But, it doesn't matter if it's like a round-shaped wrapper or a square-shaped wrapper, it's fine.
But I wonder how different it is from Mama Nguyen's version.
It's pretty much the same. I think, it's just a layer. It's more crispy.
Hers are smaller too, I think.
Yeah. It's just the way you wrap it, like dumplings. You have big ones and small ones, right?
That is true. That is
Right.
true. Yeah. Well, thank you for joining me for this, Alan Chu. I
You're
appreciate you
welcome.
being so open-minded and open-hearted.
I like it. I'm like saying my honest feelings, okay? I'm not just saying because you're my friend, Andrew Ryan, okay?
Ellen Chu, you're the best co-host a guy could ever ask for.
That's the word I'm waiting for,
I'll
okay?
pay you later.
Okay, thank you. All right, you can get it into my account. Okay.
Direct transfer.
Right. All right, so write to us. Our address is P.O. Box 123-199, Taipei, Taiwan. Email us at androo@rti.org.tw. And next Saturday on the feast,
That's right. High school students are going to be preparing for the dreaded advanced subjects tests of the university entrance exams.
whoa.
And we're going to tell you how they travel to temples to pray for the big day.
Plus, what foods do they eat and which ones do they avoid? We'll have the answer.
The answer is not to the test, but to how to prepare.
Okay. So one final song. We have this song. It is Sister, 姐妹. It's by Amei Zhang Huimei.
And that actually is what a lot of people will call the women that come from Vietnam to Taiwan. Sisters. 姐妹.
Sister. Okay,
All right.
and this is Sister Ellen.
And this is Sister Andrew.
We'll see you next time on air.
All right, bye-bye.
From a fruit market in Tel Aviv to a fish seller in Taipei, the people of our world are working hard to make a living. Are you listening? Tune in to the sounds of your world on Radio Taiwan International.